Well, good afternoon and welcome to Answers News for Wednesday, November 3rd. November 3rd. Can you believe it's already November?
I wasn't even ready for July, so.
Didn't we just have Christmas?
I think we did, yes. Now, this might look a little bit different for those of you who are used to tuning in. The backdrop is a little different. No, we're not just further back on the stage. We are in a different location right now. Ken, you want to tell everybody where we're at?
Okay, so normally Answers News is done live from the Creation Museum, and we are not doing it live from the Creation Museum. We're doing it live from the Answers Center at the Ark Encounter, simply because we are renovating the auditorium at the Creation Museum.
That's right.
And so Legacy Hall is being totally renovated, 14 years old, and as you get older, you get more tired, and things wear out, and you need replacement parts. Isn't that what happens?
I've heard about it.
You're the expert on this, Ken. You tell us.
It happens to humans, and it also happens to auditoriums as well.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be doing it from down at the Answer Center and broadcasting to our normal places that we broadcast to. We'll be doing that until probably March.
March or April, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is our twice weekly news program. I'm Tim Chafee. This is Patricia Engler, and I don't know if I need to introduce that guy. That's Ken Ham. I think you know him. So we're going to be going through several news articles today from the past week or so and giving you a biblical perspective on these matters. But before we do that, we've got some announcements, and I'll let Ken do that.
And I'm trying to get online here so I can actually be able to follow the comments on my Facebook. And we have a great live audience today. Why don't you, I don't know, clap for Tim or something? Hey. Okay, so as you can tell, we have millions of people here. Actually, there's a lot of people here at the Ark Encounter, thousands of people every day. And so Tim Chafee actually looks after the scripts and research and writing on the scripts for all of the exhibits, for all the teaching in the exhibits.
People always tell me their favorite part about the Ark is the writing, and that's at least that's what I hear. I don't know if they really say that, but that's what I'm looking for.
That could be true, because after you've written them, then you send them to me, and then I cross out the bits that are wrong, and we add them. And this is Patricia. Patricia's from Canada, actually, so she has a weird accent.
That's what people tell me. I don't actually have an accent, but I'll let you be the judge.
So, do you realize this is multinational?
Yeah, it's
today?
international. I was born in California. There's one nation.
So,
and then
so you're an American, you're Canadian, and I'm Australian. So there we are. Okay, so just to be able to give some announcements right now. Next year, we're doing something really unique. May 12th to 14th, we have what's called a homeschool experience. Now, you've heard of homeschool conferences across the nation. We're calling this an experience because it's very different. And so those who register for this, we're encouraging families to register, so all your kids and the parents, and you come and we give you an admission ticket for a week to go to the Ark or the Creation Museum. Then there's 3 specific days where we run all these different programs, whether it's horticulture or geology, biology, animal programs and so on. Then we have keynote presentations as well in our big auditorium upstairs, a 2,500 seat auditorium. And then we have some vendors here, the ones that we trust for Christian textbooks. For instance, Master Books will be one of the main sponsors, MBJU Press. And so it's a very different homeschool experience. So you actually experience things. And because of all the experts that we have here, we can give families teaching in all sorts of different areas. Whether it, as I said, horticulture, biology, geology, astronomy, all of those sorts of things. So it's very different. You can go to answershomeschool.com, and we'll be very soon putting up all the different workshop possibilities and the different programs you can sign up for and that sort of thing. And then I also wanted to mention to you our women's conference for next year, 2022. We've already got a lot of women that have already registered for that conference. I know it's well over 1,000 that have registered for that conference, but that is for next year. They're becoming very, very popular, run by Dr. Georgia Purdom. And one more plug I want to put in. We have lots of job openings at Answers in Genesis, Creation Museum, and the Ark Encounter for full-time positions, 60 full-time positions, and also for seasonals. So we need seasonals for Christmas, maybe just people who are retired and say, oh, I'm coming to earn a little bit of extra money or something, or volunteer, or whatever it is. We're actually looking for hiring a Mary and Joseph this year too. You don't have to be called Mary or Joseph. as long as you're a man and a woman. And you can be in our nativity scene. But anyway, so we have lots of positions. Go to answersandgenesis.org, go down to the bottom, and the menu is across the bottom, and the one that says help, go down about 3 or 4. You'll see jobs, link on that, and you can go to that. And we'd love to have you a part of our ministry. So, Tim, over to you.
All right. Well, just following along on YouTube here, actually, there's a comment, Ken. It says from Clara G'day, from Perth, Western Australia, which is not far from, actually, this is going to tie in really well with our first article. A little girl was just found yesterday. She's 4 years old, Cleo, was missing for 18 days and found alive and well. So that's pretty big news out there at that part of the country. We've got a news item here. Our first one is a 4-year-old boy, not far from here actually, falls off a 70-foot Kentucky cliff and walks away without severe injuries. So Patricia, you were just here. This is Red River Gorge. If you want to tell us a little bit about this place.
Yeah, so I was just there very close to where this happened, the Princess Arch it's called. So they have a number of natural arches there in the park, which is really cool, but also some dangerous cliffs and such. So I was there on an Explorer Day, so one of the programs run through the Creation Museum here with Dr. Danny Faulkner. It was really cool, but yeah, this is just an amazing instance, it looks like, of God's grace in a fallen world protecting this kid.
That's because Kentucky is the Christian state of America. You know, you have Answers and Genesis here, the Creation Museum, the Ark Encounter, and that's why everyone should move here and work for Answers and Genesis, right? So anyway, God was obviously looking after that little boy. And
70 feet's a long way down. I just did some cliff jumping about 2 months ago, 25 feet up into water, and that was a long way down. 70 feet into not water. That's
crazy.
Yeah,
so isn't it
amazing.
good to have some good news for a change rather than what we see happening out there in the culture?
All right, well, this is not necessarily good news. In fact, it's not. Here's our first item. Twix released an ad featuring a witch nanny who encourages a boy to wear dresses and maybe kills a kid who makes fun of him. So this is about a 2-minute long video.
Can I ask you a question first?
Yes.
What is Twix?
It's a candy bar. Well, 2 bars, actually. What is it, 2 for me, none for you? Is that the old slogan? But
Okay.
Actually, it tastes pretty good, but...
well, it did until now.
It did until now, right? Yeah. So this is about a 2-minute video that has nothing to do with Twix at all. And in fact, you don't see Twix anywhere in the commercial as far as I remember seeing until the very end, just as a sponsor, you see it in there. So Patricia, you have, so in this video, this boy who likes to wear dresses, a little boy, and one day a nanny shows up and is a witch, and the other kids are asking why he's dressed different, why he's dressed like a girl, and then they go to the park one day and make fun of him a little bit, and the witch does something in the background to make the kid get blown away. Maybe
literally.
Kills him, maybe, literally the kid just gets blasted out of the shot, and you don't know what happens to the kid that was making fun of him. And
so in other words, it's pushing the whole transgender thing.
yes, that's what it's pushing.
That's what it's
and
pushing.
we don't know if the kid dies or not. But Patricia, you got a lot of thoughts on this one, so we're going to let you take it away.
Oh, when you break this commercial down, it's pretty incredible the messages that it's promoting. So one of the things I noticed is that actually, if you take that narrative that's happening, it basically summarizes the key principle behind Marxism. So that whole idea is that you have this minority, it's being oppressed. So then the solution to that, to make everybody live happily ever after, is to violently overthrow the oppressor, commit some sort of revolution, forcibly remove them, and then everything's good. And that's actually what you're seeing in this commercial. So that's interesting, connection to Marxism there.
And that's what we see historically with Marxism, right? Every time there's a revolution, everything is perfect afterwards, and nothing ever goes wrong. It's utopia.
That's the idea, but it's not going to work in a sinful world.
Right, and it never has worked.
No. Then the other... just one of the other things that I noticed, a couple things. One, people who have looked at this commercial have noticed that there's no parents anywhere in it, so that's just another, shows you that this is about discipling the future decision makers of the culture. And to do that, you need to take the parents out of the picture, and then you be the person who's discipling them. So in this case, it is a literal witch. And what's interesting is she's actually teaching him the main principle of Wicca. It's called the Wiccan Rede. It says, "Any harm, no one, do what you will." So throughout the video, she's like encouraging him to wear this dress because he wants to. And you might think, well, that sounds okay because you're not harming someone. But actually, civilizations have tried that in the past. One civilization that tried it, they said, liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else. So you might think that sounds pretty good, but what civilization was this? It was revolutionary France, where they tortured and guillotined thousands and thousands of people because without God, a creator, as your source for absolutes and truth and morality, you can define harm however you want, you can define human rights however you want. So these are all things that we're seeing happening in this culture, and the commercial, unfortunately, summarizes that pretty well.
And that wasn't bad, Patricia. That was good.
I told you we brought her to be a smart one up here.
Actually, she's one of our new additions to Answers in Genesis, and she's a writer and a speaker, and you've traveled all over the world.
Interviewing Christian students about how to keep their faith at university, yeah.
Yep, and she's written a book on it.
It's
That's going to come out soon.
yeah.
So,
All right. Well, not to be outdone, Doritos made this ad for a Mexican market where a dead guy's ghost comes back to tell his family that he has a gay lover in heaven.
yeah, I actually watched, unfortunately, I watched that particular ad, and it comes back and he has, introduces them to now he has this gay partner and how wonderful it is. You've done the research on that too, Patricia.
I did watch it and look into it a little bit, and I don't know, the main thing that stood out to me about this article is, I don't know, it made it sound like this is a new thing that Doritos is doing, but it's actually part of a year-long campaign they have in Mexico called the Pride Year-Round campaign. So this is actually only one in a series of commercials that they're putting out about it. So they already had one in Christmas, and yeah, Doritos, even back in 2015, they actually had rainbow chips that they made. So this is part of a long-running agenda.
And I think one of the things that we're seeing more and more is the fact that we're really seeing the culture pushing the LGBT agenda, pushing it on children, pushing it on everyone. And as we've said over and over again, they don't want freedom for their views. They want total acceptance to the exclusion of other views.
Right. It's one thing if you are marketing this ad to people and you show people from all sorts of different walks of life or background and show them eating the chips and enjoying it, or what. That's one thing. But this is actually taking a shot right at Scripture and what it teaches on things. What does it say about who will or will not inherit the kingdom of God? You know, that whole list of things in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And I can assure you this is not something that's going to be happening in eternity. That's completely contrary to God's word. So it's not only are they pushing one agenda, they're also attacking a biblical foundation.
Right. And we're seeing, our culture has changed. Whereas, the culture was permeated by the Judeo-Christian ethic that came out of the Bible. Even if people weren't Christian in the past, they still had that Judeo-Christian ethic by and large. But now that we have generations that have been indoctrinated in the education system, in atheism, naturalism, evolution, the Bible's not true, now we're seeing a worldview, a secular worldview permeating the culture, and it becomes very antagonistic to Christianity.
And some of you may not be aware of this, but Ken has been preaching that same message for I don't want to say a real long time because I don't want to say you're that old, but it's been a long time. Longer than Patricia's been alive. I remember hearing him in the 90s.
That's actually true.
Yeah. I remember hearing you in the 90s talking about how if we lose this foundation in Genesis, you're going to have gay marriage, and parents aren't going to realize this is coming. I
was talking on that in the 80s over here, and even in the 70s in Australia.
You are that old.
Okay, right. Let's go to the next article. Right. Talking about old, 99 million. I'm not that old.
99 million-year-old crab discovered trapped inside of amber. If you remember, not that any Christian watched this movie, we had to watch it for research, but Jurassic Park. At the beginning, they have the mosquito and amber, and that's how they get the DNA and everything. So you get this tree sap, basically, that hardens. And in this one, they find this little itty-bitty crab that's maybe 5 millimeters long, and its body itself is just 2 millimeters. And what they're amazed about is how well preserved. It's a crab.
It's amazing. They looked at it and said, "Oh, we have a crab."
99 million years ago, it was a crab, and what is it? It looks just like
a crab
today. Aren't you amazed?
They even recognized it as a crab.
Yeah. It even has a lot of parts that are just very advanced crab-like.
And they said it had all these features that are modern-like. You know what they mean by modern-like? Just like crabs.
I love how they said it's remarkably similar to modern crabs, because, why would that be remarkable unless you're starting with evolutionary assumptions?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be remarkable.
Yeah. And in fact, they say there are some differences. Well, you'd expect differences.
Yeah.
We would, from a creationist perspective, because God built tremendous genetic diversity into each kind, and we see differences in crabs today, and there's differences in people. Look around the room here today, we see differences in people, right?
But one reason they're amazed at this is because before they hadn't seen any evidence of crabs, of that type of crab, beyond 75 million years ago. So now this pushes it back by another 25 million or so.
Do you know what I think is the most profound statement they write in this article? See, it's interesting. If you learn to read these articles and look for these things, this is the most profound statement, I think. You ready? It is not a missing link. It's more like a distant cousin to modern crabs. In other words, it's not a missing link because it's a crab.
Right.
I mean, that's incredibly profound. Crabs are not missing links because they're crabs.
And if you think it's hard to evolve a crab once without a missing link, I found an article quoting on this research, and it said that they think scientists are thinking that the body plan for true and false crabs would have had to evolve separately 5 times, independently.
By chance, random processes. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, if you're
Yeah.
struggling to understand how small these are, I said the body size is about 2 millimeters and the crab itself is about 5 millimeters. We've got 2 international people here who can explain what millimeters are because the rest of us as Americans maybe struggle with that.
They're tiny.
All right.
Actually, you know what? For my birthday recently, one of our granddaughters, she did me a card, and she said, 70 is 21 in Celsius.
Nice.
That was smart.
I thought that was pretty good. See, I like the metric system.
Yeah, me too.
All right. All right. So DNA tangles can help predict evolution of mutations. Who wants to take this one?
Well, basically, let me give it a view, and then I know Patricia's got some things to say on this too. But one of the things we have discovered is that DNA is that molecule of heredity that has all this information that builds a crab or a horse or a cow or a human or whatever. And more they're finding out there's different levels of information within DNA. And they're finding out even the shape of the DNA itself has information or actually does things to enable things to happen. And so what they're really saying here is they're looking at the shape of these DNA strands, and it's in bacteria. And from a creationist perspective, there's no new information that is ever added. I mean, evolutionists require over millions of years, as one kind changes to another, you've got to add new information into the information system. We're not seeing any new information here, and we're seeing a system that enables what they call mutations, but it's to enable the bacteria to survive in certain environments. We'd say it's a created ability, but I think the bottom line is bacteria, Patricia, always remain.
Bacteria.
There it is, right there. And so this is not evolution.
No. And you can see that in the wording here. It talks about the evolution of bacteria and viruses over time. So you see that kind of thing in textbooks. I remember my first year biology textbook, it had this heading that said, evolution is supported by an overwhelming amount of scientific evidence. And the first example of that evidence they gave, you can guess what it was.
Bacteria resistant to
Absolutely,
antibiotics.
that's right, yes. But is that actually evolution? No, it's not something changing between kinds. It's a loss of information leading to variation within created kinds. So this is actually observational science, something we can see happening in the present, not this idea about things evolving between kinds, which is historical science. You can't see it. You can tell that this is observational science that we're dealing with here because right in the article it said they looked at the evolution of 2 strains. If you can look at it, you know it's not going to be something changing between kinds because we don't see that happening. So it's a bait and switch on evolution there.
Yeah, you can't look at evolution.
No.
Right.
No.
And they'll even say that it happens so slowly you can't see it.
Yeah.
So
Or happens so fast you missed it.
right.
It's one or the other.
Yeah, that's the other view. So this one, just if you've heard that antibiotic resistance thing before, that's evolution. Think of it this way. This is kind of what happens is that maybe that drug that you're given, the antibiotic, wipes out 99% of them. That 1% is resistant to that. That's the one that survives, and so that drug no longer works on it because those are the ones multiplying. It'd be like if we said everybody in this room who is over 5'7" or something gets eliminated. Well, guess what? If these are the only people left, you're going to have just short people, and you're going to continually just have short people. The tall people are gone. That's not evolution. That's if you keep the tall people, that's evolution. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Now, sometimes there can be a mutation
Yeah.
that will stop the production of an enzyme or something like that. That, like one of the ways in which antibiotics can work is that the bacterium produces an enzyme that breaks the antibiotic into poisons that destroys it. But if there's a mutation and it loses the ability to make that enzyme, then it has become resistant, but it's actually got less information.
Right.
None of this is evolution. That's
Right. There's times that it can be beneficial, but it's not gaining new genetic information that will allow it to turn into something different.
And it's only beneficial in a limited sense for
Right.
that time there. So
Like the wingless beetle on
that's
a
why if
windblown
you've
island or something.
If you've
like
ever heard of those infections you can get, super infections, in hospitals or something like that, if you go out and roll in the dirt, you're more likely to survive. In other words, what's happened is you've eliminated all of these bacteria. You're only left with the ones that are resistant, but they're weaker than the others. And in a normal environment, they don't survive as well. So there's a lot to this. And sadly, our kids in our schools are not being taught the truth about all this. They're just indoctrinated.
But when you look at the observational science, even of this article, it does actually support biblical worldview models. So it's talking about mutational hotspots, so things that can cause specific areas of the DNA to mutate more. That's actually something that biblical models would predict. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Yep. All right. So this next one, get ready for controversy. Instagram censors biologists for posting evidence showing men have advantages over women in sports. So... Patricia, we brought you up here just so we can offend you. No, I'm kidding. But we've got a video of this, and I'll introduce this a little bit. So go ahead and start. This is a 4x400 relay, mixed relay. So they start doing with 2 men on a team and 2 females on a team. And you can put them in whichever order you want as a team. So in this video, I think it's Poland had one of their female runners run last. And so she started the last lap with a big lead. And watch what happens right about here.
And in fact, the commentator even says she knew what was going to happen.
Right. Now, she's running really, really fast, way faster than I could ever imagine running myself, but she can't compete with the men. Why? Because men are just faster on average than women. Yes, you can find some women who are faster than some men. In the year 2017, there was some research done. This is the world's fastest woman in the 100-meter dash, 10.71 seconds. Okay, way faster than I could ever do it. Number of boys under 18 years old. In the same year, 124 of them beat that time. Okay, and this is repeated all the time. 200-meter dash, woman's best time, 21.77. The number of boys under age 18 outperforming that, 182 of them. The number of men in the 100-meter dash that outperformed that is almost 2,500 of them. Okay, it's observable fact that in most sports, when it's requiring strength and speed and things like that, men are superior in that because we're different. God made us different. That doesn't mean we're better. Okay, we're equal yet different. And God made male and female. He made them distinct. And guess what? There are things that women are better at.
Well, another example is my wife tried to run away from me, and I caught her and said, you're going to marry me. And so she had no option.
I'm thinking critically about that.
But this is another example of the typical censorship going on in our culture, where their agenda of the secular media is such that if you say anything to contradict their anti-God agenda, they're just going to banish you.
And call it hate speech. That's one thing that stood out to me is it says Instagram promptly removed one of his posts for hate speech. And one reason why that concerns me, being Canadian, is back in June of this year, there was a bill tabled, or it was read, I guess. The first reading was in Parliament, called Bill C-36. That's going to be, it's against hate speech, and they define hate speech. That's the problem, is you can define it basically however you want to. So I can see them potentially using this to ban the
it's like
Bible
anything. When they say, it'll never be used against Christians or whatever, but then it is.
It is. Yep.
Right? It's
Always.
like when the LGBT movement said, look, all we want is freedom for our views. That's all we want. Now you're finding out, no, it's not what you want. You want acceptance totally.
And not just
exclusion of others.
Celebration.
Yeah.
They want more than just acceptance. They want a celebration of that, or else you're unfit. You don't belong in it. There's other examples too. I mean, if you watch things like American Ninja Warrior, or if you watch CrossFit, there are some incredible female athletes in there, but they don't match to what the men can do. Even though what they're doing, all of them are doing some amazing things, but they're not at the same level, just because biologically we are different. It's just that simple. And yet we have so-called modern science is just flat out denying what everybody knows to be true, and it's to push an agenda.
Just recently, the U.S. government said you can have passports with X for your gender. So, there they are forcing that on the culture. We've got about 6 minutes to go, Tim.
All right. So were the dinosaurs cold-blooded? So this is something that when the ideas of dinosaurs were first, when we were digging up the iguanodon back in the 1800s, one of those first dinosaurs that was dug up again, and people were trying to figure out what these creatures were like. If you see some of the old movies, the really old ones, they were these slow, sluggish creatures because they thought they were, just these large reptiles, so they must be cold-blooded. They got to lay in the sun for a long time to warm up to get going, and so they don't have a lot of energy. Then the whole idea that they evolved into birds came along, and people said, no, they've got to be warm-blooded. And there are some arguments as far as the warm-blooded thing goes. It's hard to imagine a creature like Brachiosaurus sitting in the sun long enough to be able to move. I mean, it's going to take a long time to warm up a creature that large. So this one proposes that maybe they were mesotherms. They were kind of in between, because not every creature is perfectly cold-blooded or warm-blooded. So
Right.
This one's saying, well, maybe they were mesotherms.
Well, God made all sorts of different features, and his creatures, that rhymed, so.
Yeah, that was good.
But, hey, one of the things I should say, too, is a lot of people get confused about dinosaurs because they don't understand them. The word dinosaur is a modern word. It was made up in 1841. And the word dinosaur now would refer to about 80 different kinds of land animals. So when anyone says, did God make the dinosaurs? Well, God made all the land animal kinds, and now we've taken 80 of those kinds and just given them the name dinosaur. So when people say, did dinosaurs get on the ark? I say, well, what we today call dinosaurs got on the ark, but that's only a subset of all the animal kinds that God made, and he took each kind on the ark. So people seem to get totally confused by dinosaurs because they don't understand them. They say the word dinosaur is not in the Bible. Well, neither is the word email, right? Because that's a modern word. So we've got to make sure we understand things the right way there. Right.
All right. This mom found an insane list on her woke son's laptop where he listed the sins his classmates had committed. So this mom sent in a letter saying that her son, 14 years old, had been maintaining a spreadsheet that tracks all of his classmates' problematic actions. What were some of the problematic actions that these horrible, awful, terrible kids were doing?
Yeah, I mean, at his age, Patricia, you would have done that, right?
Well, he made a list. One kid had a mom who was a cop, it says. Oh no. One person used no pronouns in their Insta bio. The other mimicked a foreign accent.
Who would ever do that?
I know. Not me.
G'day. You want to
G'day.
hear my southern accent? Well, bless your
don't know.
heart.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so mimicking foreign accents, that was a hate crime. And using cisnormative language. So, I mean, because kids are born talking like that, right? Cisnormative language. That's something they're discipled into.
So what's the purpose of this? Why is this boy, 14 years old, keeping track of all of these sins, quote unquote, of his classmates? Who is teaching him to do that? Why are they doing that?
Well, because they want to create racism. I mean, that's what's happening. Our politicians, our educators are trying to create racism. And you know what's interesting?
In all forms of division.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in all forms of division. It's interesting, there was just an election in Virginia, and there's a lot of battles over the critical race theory and things like that. One of the things I always tell people, they say, well, what do you think about, say, critical race theory? Well, first of all, is the foundation for it man's word or God's word? It's not God's word, it's man's word. Therefore, the whole worldview is secular. Right? So when you start from God's word, you have a whole different worldview. You can see what's happening here is people are brainwashing these kids because their foundation is man's word, and they want to put them into a particular mold that they want for the future.
Yeah, and you judge people based on, from this view, from CRT, you judge people based on the color of their skin. I thought Martin Luther King Jr. talked about how we should be judged by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. And that's not to say that there haven't been wrongs to groups of people. Of course there have. People are sinful, and sinners are going to sin.
Well, I always remind people of 1 Samuel 16, when Samuel came to anoint the king and didn't know it was going to be David, and he saw David's brother. And just from the description there, tall, handsome, on the football team. Well, maybe not that. But what did God say? God say, I have refused him because man looks on the outside, whereas God looks at the heart. And so that's what we've got to remember is it's the inside that matters. It's not the outside. It's the inside that matters.
That's right. And that's what we're seeing in our culture today, that we're seeing all sorts of things pushing us to divide. That's part of Marxism. You create as much chaos and division as possible. And what the Bible tells us is that we need to love one another, to love our enemy, to pray for those who persecute you. It tells us all those things that we should be doing. And these philosophies are trying to drive a wedge and try to drive people apart, because then who gets to step in and solve it? The government does. And it's not a biblical worldview in any way, shape, or form. Well, that does it for our time today. Thank you for joining us for Answers News on Wednesday, November 3rd. Have a great day.